Mac, it's great to see you. How you doing?
Sachin, I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm doing great. Just excited to reconnect with you. It's been a while, and I'm stoked to have you as a guest, our first filmmaker on
All right.
Coffee with Creatives. So,
Stoked, stoked.
welcome.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. So, all right. For anyone who doesn't know Hello Tomorrow Wedding Films, who are you, and how did you become a wedding filmmaker?
Oh man. So yeah, my name is Maclean from Hello Tomorrow. Along with my wife Erin, we are Hello Tomorrow Films. We started creating wedding films about 16 years ago now, and actually right around the time we got together and started dating, we um, started doing wedding films, and it just kind of came organically. I was always really into video growing up, making skate videos and short comedy skits with friends, um, and then my sister got married when I was really young. I was like 18, and they hired a videographer, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that was a thing. And at that time, it was barely a thing. Um, and yeah, that seemed super interesting. So I was working construction at the time, and I wasn't loving it. Um, and so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just, while I'm young, I'm just gonna dive into this and see how it goes. And then it kind of just snowballed. So we got going early, 2 years or so of um, just kind of building our name around the city, and we were booking a good amount of weddings, and it was going all right. But then the opportunity came for me to go to film school, and that was really something I had always wanted to do. So I got to do that, and that was awesome. And in film school, I learned a whole lot about um, the creativity behind like storytelling and story structure and all of that, and decided when I left film school to bring that into our wedding film work. So that was kind of how current Hello Tomorrow evolved. And that was, yeah. So as it 2006 got started. So yeah, it's been a minute. That's
That's
crazy.
amazing. Congrats. So,
Mhm.
if you were to start again, or if you were to start now, what would your advice be to somebody who wanted to get
Ooh.
into filmmaking?
Well, now there's so much education around it, which is amazing. And there was virtually none when I was getting started in terms of, non-traditional like film school or what have you. But now there's like so many amazing free resources. But I would say if I were starting today, I would say invest into some like really focused education, as well as seek out a mentor that you would really like to be able to meet with, and someone that you admire their work and would like to learn from. I think that would fast forward. That would have fast forwarded like 5, 6 years for me, I would say. So yeah, that would be my advice for sure.
Beautiful. So, with regards to the filmmaking school and structuring story, I definitely want to focus a lot today on just storytelling in general, but definitely storytelling
Cool.
in video. So,
Yeah.
how do you approach storytelling in your videos?
So yeah, like when we got started, it was so kind of just montagey, and I feel like this is the case with a lot of videographers, that you get into it because the tech is exciting and you're like, "Ooh, I can make stuff look pretty." Um, and then the storytelling and even lighting and composition kind of fall by the wayside. You just jump in and make flashy stuff. Um, but then for us, like I said, after film school, decided to put story in, and that was something that kind of evolved for us. But what it ultimately came down to was an essential part for storytelling is conflict. And that's so tricky in weddings because, a couple are pretty happily in love and getting married. So there's a dead giveaway that there's not much conflict on the wedding day. But what we realize is, oh, there is conflict. It's just not happening on the wedding day.
Mm.
So that's what's so great about the power of audio in wedding films, is being able to hear words from the family or loved ones, but also the couple. If they're doing like personal vows or something, you can hear about any obstacles they overcame through their relationship, and that usually becomes the backbone of our story.
Wow.
So just kind of being open to, okay, the wedding is more just the setting,
Mm.
whereas the couple are the story, and how they got to the day is the story.
So, conflict in movies, are you
Yeah.
are you saying, like, you would see a Spider-Man movie and then there's a villain, and that's the conflict there that he needs to overcome or defeat this villain? And
Yeah, in a way, that's like the uh extreme example, but there can be even more like minute examples of like intention and obstacle is kind of what it comes down to. So if a character has an intention and then there's an obstacle in their way, that is conflict. Conflict does sound though like it's a fight scene. Conflict can be time, can be distance, it can be more abstract things too.
Got you. So challenges, friction,
Yes.
obstacles, things like that, that the hero, I guess, in your wedding films are the couple, and it's basically spotlighting them and showcasing how they've overcome these sort of challenges to bring them together on their wedding day. Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
So then how would you structure that into a story, or are you playing to what happens on a wedding day? Because as a wedding photographer, there's so much that I know about a couple in advance, and how they got to that on their wedding day, but really it's about documenting it as it happens.
Right.
At least for me, documenting it as it happens on the wedding day, and then piecing together a story via shooting the details and shooting the families and moments between them. So typically we would document these things, piece it together in the form of a slideshow, and then deliver that to a couple. But what you're saying is that you in advance know the kind of challenges and the friction that a couple may have overcome to get there on the wedding day. So could you walk us through a bit of your process so that one can understand like how you unravel this for your couples?
Yeah, totally. So like you said, we definitely try to chat with the couple beforehand and get a good idea of this kind of conflict. And sometimes we have a questionnaire we'll send out. We have a straight up question like, hey, what obstacles did you come across coming to this day? And that is more of a guiding light. It's not necessarily the hard and fast rule of the wedding day itself. We, of course, don't want to be rigid. We want to be flexible and make sure we're capturing things that are true to the couple and true to the day. But when we do that homework ahead of time, we're a lot more conscious of capturing certain things or maybe other supporting characters, if you will, that might have played a role in their story, their intention and obstacle, or even things, anything related to that story. We just know, okay, here we have an opportunity to emphasize that. So let's get these shots to make sure we have that. But of course, like the day, it is like when it comes down to it on its most primal level, couples they want to remember their day. So that will happen. We are going to document all of everything. But in terms of piecing together the story in an edit, we kind of think of as, okay, their story is like the backbone, and then B-roll is going to be stuff to support that as well as stuff that happened on the day. So we're definitely doing a bit of both.
And so before you went to film school, you were very much shooting these montage type films that you mentioned, and then you went to film school, learned about story, the structure, etc. And then you've now been creating wedding films for many years.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a good story and a great story?
I would say character. That is a huge one, because you can have a interesting story that on paper that just falls flat. If you have interesting characters that are three-dimensional and that you can show rather than tell, I think that can go a really long way in making a film, just even leave a lasting impression. Because like we tell couples all the time, like sometimes when they see wedding films, they think a lot of it might be staged. We're like, no, please be yourself, do your thing, because they'll enjoy their day more. But in the film, their real selves will come across more, and that's so much more interesting. So for me, a character is maybe the biggest.
Were there, as you were getting closer and closer to sharing more powerful stories, were there certain moments in your career where you felt like, this is not the formula, but this is it, like these are the keys, and we want to make this exactly what Hello Tomorrow are about?
I think it was that realization that conflict doesn't happen necessarily on the wedding day. For a long time, story, that word is so overused. I'm very guilty of it. It's talked about all the time. And for a long time, I would say it and be like, I don't really know what it means. Like I would try to me, it kind of meant some, sequences rather than just montages. So, beginning, middle, and end of an action. But then realizing, oh, no, there is a story to be told that led to the day. That was the biggest realization. And then creatively, like in terms of logistics of how we shoot, realizing like it was very in vogue to have all the stabilizers and gimbals and really, you know, spotlights and all this stuff. And we felt that pressure early on to have that and like kind of, you know, follow along with the trends. But then finally listen to our gut and just be like, forget it. We're just not even going to bring that stuff anymore. We're just going to go handheld. We're just going to get in there and have fun. So that those two things together, I think, kind of melded into what Hello Tomorrow is today.
And would you say that just comes with time and experience of like really seeing what's out there in terms of the trends, wanting to be, you know, relevant in some way because that's what others are doing, but then also staying true to your style and what really resonates with you?
I think so. For a long time, you feel, especially if you're new in the industry, you feel pressure to kind of, I don't know, you listen to everything and everyone, and you kind of unintentionally even fit in. And then with time kind of came just this ability to listen to our gut a bit more and just be like, no, I'm going to do what I like. And then hopefully the couples will follow. That's a scary thing if you're doing this full time, because you want to, of course, you know, you want to book up. But once you have that safety net of, okay, I think I'm confident enough that I will book weddings, you can take a bit more of a risk creatively.
And so what kind of risks do you feel you've been taking recently or even in the last year with the films that you've been shooting?
That's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily call it a risk, but I've just tried to focus on making the key moments of a day, just shooting those better instead of always running around. And for a long time, I was always focused on like, hey, I got to get really great portrait stuff just because it's so helpful in an edit. But now I try to rely on it less and less, and instead rely more and more on shooting something in a more unique way that's true to the couple, but also interesting for the viewer. So that is one thing. And then also realizing to make edits that aren't necessarily just for the couple. Like I want the couple to love it, no doy. But I also want anyone watching to be compelled by the story, visually and literally, like through the storytelling of the dialogue. So those would be the two risks, because you do kind of risk like maybe you don't want to, but it could happen that a bride or groom see their film and they're like, oh, but they didn't include this moment, which is maybe a good moment in and of itself, but doesn't really lend itself to the story. So it's a fine line, but that would be the risk, I guess, I'm taking lately.
Yeah, nice. So if you do have a couple who they remember a moment and it was captured and they want that as part of their film, how do you overcome that challenge and that friction between what they feel like is a key part of the story, but as an experienced storyteller, filmmaker for 17 years or more, how do you navigate that?
So we offer multiple films in our packages. And so we try to put couples at ease, being like, hey, no matter what happens, you will get all of the main events of the day. You get your whole ceremony, you get all of your speeches. That will all be there. So that can free us up creatively and allow them to worry less about what's necessarily in their short film, which is around 6 minutes long. 99% of the time, couples are totally cool with that. I do feel like it's rare that there's a moment that doesn't really serve itself to the story we have in mind, but it has happened. In which case, if a couple's adamant and we, of course, want to make them happy, we will make that edit change for them. It just might not be the version of it we show. I can't remember the last time that happened, but it is something we've done before.
Nice.
Yeah.
So for wedding films, music is so key in movies. Hans Zimmer is an incredible composer, and just the way he's
great.
Yeah, the way he brings music into his movies and collaborates with the filmmaker is really incredible. So, and as a wedding photographer, the music choice for a slideshow is super important. So how do you find the right music for your wedding films?
That is you're right. That is so huge, because it is so much of it sets the tone for a film. It sets the pace, the dynamics, all of that. So we are constantly looking. We are thankfully set up with, we're ambassadors for the company that we think are the best at it, and that's the Musicbed. And they have unreal music on there, like from composers, so like proper scores, to also amazing just individual artists, bands, all of that, that it doesn't, thankfully, it's not like you're just getting Coldplay knockoffs off a stock audio site. Like they're truly wonderful artists and amazing music. So thankfully the quality is there, but finding the right vibe is tricky. We always ask couples ahead of time what they, just genres and vibes that they're kind of into to help kind of motivate our decision a little bit. Because we obviously, like, if a couple loves country music, it'd be good to know that. If or they hate country music, that would be good to know that. I'm not a huge country fan, so yeah, that kind of stuff's helpful to know. And then it's just a kind of a trial and error. There'll be times where I get, the first song I think of works perfectly. There's other times where I take a full week to find a song, and that is the worst and very defeating. But once you get the right song, though, it all kind of, it just hits, and it in your gut, and that is when things start to fall into place a lot easier. So there's no real clear-cut answer, other than, I think actually one helpful tip about that is I used to try and find a song that was just one song that had everything I wanted in it, and that was the whole film. And then realizing, no, you can have like 3-4 songs if you need, just shorten them up and kind of create the dynamics through different songs. That has helped me a lot. But it's a ever-evolving process for sure.
And what would you say the process is? Are you finding the music first and then cutting up the video and adding that together, or is it a bit of vice versa, or a bit of both? How does it
a bit of both. I'm always making the Musicbed's really good. They have an ability to save playlists, so I'm going through there all the time and just saying, hey, this could be good. I could envision this for a wedding film, so I'll save it. And then when a wedding comes close, I start kind of thinking about it and getting a vibe for maybe what the film will feel like. That kind of narrows it down for me. And then I usually make the final decision, though, after the wedding day, because the wedding day is going to, no matter how prepared you are, it's probably going to be a little bit different than you had expected. So we want to make sure that vibe of the day is, that feeling is in the music too. So usually after, there have been the odd times where I've picked it beforehand, but usually after the wedding.
Nice. Yeah, because I guess, so you're having these discussions with your couples, you're getting to understand I'll use your term, the conflict that they would have gone through to get to the wedding day. The wedding day happens, so you've kind of got a bit of a story or a storyboard in your mind as to how you're going to piece this together. Right. And then the day happens, and that unfolds naturally as it would.
Yeah.
Then are you going back to the studio where you are now and kind of reflecting back, letting that sink in, and matching the feeling of the day to the original kind of concept, so to speak?
Exactly. Yeah. And we try not to shoehorn it. If it is different than what we initially thought, we go with what actually happened. But usually there is a lot of overlap, and that's when we're kind of deciding, okay, they mentioned this in their questionnaire when we talked with them. So we know that this is going to be, maybe the climax of the film. They're so looking forward to this moment. It means a lot to them. This will be the climax. So that way every other decision we make in the edit points to that. It's serving to that. Like, it's all building to that point. So yeah, usually it's kind of like, hey, before the wedding, okay, what direction are we going in? What's the broad idea? And then after the wedding is, okay, let's start chipping away at this and really, narrow it down.
Who would you say are some incredible storytellers in the wedding industry, outside of the wedding industry? Or yeah, who comes to mind?
In the wedding industry, I try not to watch a whole lot of other wedding filmmakers super closely. I have lots of friends in the industry that I'll follow, but the one company I follow that I really admire is called A Little Long Distance. And they're based in the US. I'm not exactly sure where in the US. I think it might be the South, but they are incredible at doing a lot of sourcing of old home movies from the couple and working that into the film. That has been really, really interesting. I've flat out stole from them. I do that now. But they do it better, and it's unreal. In terms of storytellers in general, I'm a movie nerd for sure, so I have an endless list of names that I really love in like the Hollywood era or space. David Fincher is one that comes to mind. I'm a huge David Fincher fan. Roger Deakins, who's my favorite cinematographer, is an unreal visual storyteller. And then I guess in the wedding space, Nate Kaiser of The Images Found.
Images Found, yeah.
Unreal. I remember, like, I'm not a photographer myself. I do it for fun, but I'm not good. But I look at his work and I'm like, I want to do that. Like his personal work, and especially his like work with his children is beautiful. So those are a few that jump to mind.
Yeah, some absolute gems in there. Beautiful. What advice would you have for photographers like myself who are, the access to video is unreal now? Obviously, phones or cameras. It's video seems to be everywhere. And maybe there's photographers out there who aren't using video, but want to incorporate more of that kind of storytelling into their wedding work. So that could be
nice.
Just something as simple as telling stories, Instagram stories, on a wedding day, or it could be actually just diving into actually making movies or home movies of their own family, so that they can, treasure and enjoy that for years to come. What would your top keys be for somebody who wants to get more into video filmmaking?
Well, for photographers especially, I would say, other than the technical stuff that can be learned rather easily, and they likely know a great deal of already, don't sell yourself short and get overwhelmed by like the gear and like camera movement. Like camera movement is good, but it's overdone a lot of the time. I would say for photographers, lean into what you're already amazing at, which is lighting and composition. That is something that most filmmakers learn way too late. So I think photographers, once you get past some of the technical stuff, they have such a head start in creating meaningful images. And because so much of filmmaking is composition and light, and photographers already have such a wonderful understanding of that. So I would just say, like, don't think too much about movement of the camera, movement in the frame, yes, but movement of the camera, worry about that maybe a bit later, and just focus on your strengths of light and composition.
Love it. Okay, so if somebody has shot a bit of video at their next wedding, or even when they're doing a portrait shoot, they want to do like behind the scenes, what would the next steps be in terms of like editing that, some quick kind of steps that they could take to now actually like bring that to life for others to see?
Ooh, I mean, that's tough. I would say just dive in, just start experimenting and seeing how music can affect the vibe of those shots you get. Seeing how regular motion and slow motion can make a difference, and just go for it. Like, I think it's the best way to learn is by doing so. And like you said before, like photographers already have so much of the gear that it takes, and most video people are using photo lenses and stuff. So I would say, just jump in and give it a whirl. Try stories is a perfect way to do it. I would hesitate maybe to shoot too much portrait right out the gate, just because Instagram and everything. But if mess around with YouTube, iMovie is great. You don't have to worry about getting like Final Cut or Adobe or anything like that, unless you're Creative Cloud. You already got Adobe. But you got the tools. Everyone's cameras are great. Don't worry about any of that. Just jump in and start using your eye and messing around with stuff. Just go for it.
Right. Speaking of tools, what are some of the tools that you use on a wedding day? In 2018, we shot a wedding. I think it's 2018. We shot a wedding together. We shot a few weddings together. But
yeah, man, we've been doing this a while.
Yeah. But I remember just seeing you and Erin, and I couldn't believe how minimal like your setup was, and also how little of both of you I saw, because as a photographer, you're around. For any wedding photographer who's listening to this, typically wedding videographers, you can be very aware of them, and they're
right.
Sometimes you're fighting for space, things like that, or you have a scene set up and then in comes a wedding videographer.
Yes.
And now it's like, now they're part of the frame. And yeah, totally. Or the bride's entering and then the old like swoop across. But we communicated so well together, and I loved shooting with you. But I also remember coming home and thinking, like, where were they actually? I don't
Did they even get to anything?
But that's just like some true video ninja skills. So one, just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah,
Incredible.
thank you.
And hope
Thanks,
we can
dude.
do that again together
Yeah,
soon.
let's. It's been too long.
But also, what is for the gearheads out there? What tools are you using? What are kind of your go-to? What is kind of in your bag, so to speak? What's your go-to setup?
So for a long time, first of all, we shoot on 3 cameras. We don't bring any real like steady cams, anything like that. We have tripods and monopods for, long ceremonies and speeches. Otherwise, we're handheld most of the day, and we shoot on Canon's cinema line of cameras, the C70 primarily. We also have an R5 as our C cam. And I used to be such a prime snob, and I always shot only primes, and I do love primes, but it kind of dawned on me how effective a good zoom can be. So lately, to minimize our gear even more, we've started shooting on a lot of the Sigma 24-70, just because, and treating it like a variable prime. We're not trying to we're still trying to use the prime principles, but that has allowed us to be so much more flexible in the day, not having to always worry about where's my gear bag, I need to change lenses for this moment and all this stuff, because that does affect the final product, I think, for video. And we don't have the benefit of, I know a lot of photographers have the dual cameras on them at all times, which is dope, but it's harder to do that with larger cinema rigs. So I'm usually on that kind of setup for most of the day. We'll switch to certain long lens primes for other key moments. And then that's kind of the meat and potatoes of our kit. And then audio is a huge part too. We have a whole separate audio bag that we got, lav mics and recorders everywhere. And then lighting, we've recently started playing around with, again, wanting to keep things minimal. It's often in wedding films that, a lot of filmmakers will bring like a big spotlight, which is great. I've always kind of resisted it just because I felt like it could alter the mood a little bit. So I started kind of using practical lights. And for those who maybe aren't sure, practicals are like lights within the scene that also actually add light to your subject. So I've started using a practical light for like speeches and stuff, and that's been really cool, and allowing me to keep my kit still nice and small. But yeah, I'd say that stuff.
So when you're lighting, as you mentioned, like speeches, things like that, you mentioned a practical light. Do you have an example there that you can show us, or are you saying?
Do I? Do somewhere.
That's all right. So good.
I put it away in a bag in a different room. But I use I can describe it. It's just like a cylinder opaque lampshade. It's glass. It's maybe about 1.5 feet tall, and I just put a little tube light in it, just a little aperture tube light. It's about 1 foot long, and then I just put that in it, face it towards the speech giver, so one side's a little hotter than the other. And then if you place that on a high top table, ideally, or even a podium, as long as you're careful not to get too much of that campfire look, it looks beautiful. You can see some of my recent work on wedding films we've done uses that, and that I just think it looks so good. I'm such a geek for practical lights, so that's just fun for me. But we have gotten a lot of comments from couples that are like, oh, that didn't even notice. A lot of times they don't realize till after I mention it. They're like, I was there, and they'll go check it. So it's nice that it doesn't feel like an award show with spotlights. It's just this nice kind of blends into the scene.
So for any filmmakers who are wanting to get out there, and again, if you're a photographer and you've already got the gear, but if you're starting out, what would you say to them if they're on a budget but they want to experiment with some lighting to light their scenes for even like the home movies?
Yeah. I would say, as you know, windows are your best friends. Those are great. Tube lights are a really good source, and they're relatively inexpensive, and you can get a really nice soft look from a relatively small package instead of having like a huge softbox and all this. I would say that's a good starting point for sure. And then just being mindful, like watching movies, seeing how they do it, even seeing resources on YouTube and that. Just because I don't know much about the flash world, but it's pretty different than constant lights. And yeah, so I'd say tube lights is a good place to start.
I like it. So I understand you have a course coming out, a new course on storytelling in video.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
That's exciting. Can you, before you share, I would love to hear who's it for, what's it about, things like that. Can you walk us through a bit of like just the journey of creating something like this? What did you go through to put this together and actually put it out there? Because sometimes you see a course and it's released, but you just don't know the background as to like how does something like that even get put together. So
definitely
walk us through your journey.
Yeah, so we have been wanting to do kind of some educational stuff for a while, but we're hella introverted, so we didn't really want to get up on stage if we could help it. So then the pandemic happened, and we're like, oh, we got a little bit of extra time. And then so I sat down one day, I was like, I don't think I have all that much to share. And I just spewed out like 15 pages of notes. And I was like, oh, I guess I have some stuff to say. And that over the course of the following year kind of turned into this course. We wanted to focus it down into like, it is about videography in general. So for people who are just kind of getting started in filmmaking, we've actually had it open for a year and we're about to relaunch it. But we had a lot of photographers during the first round that took it that are starting to explore video, and they said it was all very helpful for the technical and also the creative. So that was cool. And yeah, we just kind of chiseled away at it for months and months and months. And then early last year is when it went into high gear for me, and I put it all together, and we launched it for the first time in May of last year. And it was kind of just an experiment. We just really wanted to truly just make something helpful. I just wanted good feedback. I didn't care about anything else as long as people were like, no, this was good. I just had imposter syndrome. I didn't want someone to be like, I learned this already, you're dumb. So when that didn't happen, I was stoked. And yeah, we just kind of poured all of our knowledge and experience into it. And it's been really rewarding to see how many people have enjoyed it. So yeah, we've recently changed it up a bit. We've added some stuff new for this year, and we're going to be releasing it on April 17th. But it'll only be available for 1 week, and then it's going to go away for a while. But yeah, so it's been a cool journey for sure.
All right. So walk us through a bit of what's included. What would one expect to see if they get into this course?
So we definitely made this course with our younger selves in mind. We wanted to, avoid the mistakes we made and kind of fast forward a lot of the learning. And so a big part of that is demystifying story. That's kind of the phrase I like to use, just because it does seem so much like this grandiose thing when you hear the words story and storytelling and all this. And we try to really break it down, especially in wedding films specifically, as to what that means and what that looks like practically. So it dives into story and story structure in wedding films and our philosophy, but also technical. And then we walk through all of the pre-production, post-production, or production and post-production of our entire process. And what the result is about a little over 3 hours of content. And it's about, I think it's over 25 lessons and like a workbook and all this. Some bonus lessons. We also throw some LUTs in there for filmmakers. So yeah, we it was cool to put together.
Awesome. Congrats. That's
Thanks,
great.
dude. Yeah.
Sweet. So we're going to have some questions from the audience as well. If you're here live, have those ready, and we're going to open up the Zoom room here. If you're watching this on YouTube, then come and join us live, where we have guests every single week. Today, we're here with Mac from Hello Tomorrow. And if you're listening to this on the pod, then again, join us live on Zoom and again on YouTube. So I have some quick fire questions I wanted to ask you, Mac. Bit of a tradition here, and great way to just get an insight into you as a filmmaker and a creator. So some things you already mentioned, actually, which were your favorite kind of filmmakers and movies. What would you say is like the number one movie for you?
Oh man, that's a ever-changing question, but the one that's always on the list is The Social Network. So what's that, 2007? That one is a big one for me. I love that movie, just everything about it, visually, storytelling, performances, all of that. And then I have to mention Prisoners. That's another one that I truly love, mainly for the cinematography. The story is great too, but yeah, those are currently front of mind for sure.
Very cool. Prisoners, I'm gonna have to check that out. I haven't heard of that one. Have you seen
I bet you'd recognize the poster.
Oh,
okay. It was a few years back. Yeah.
All right, cool. Anything that you've seen recently that you've just been blown away by in the theater or?
I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was wonderful. It was bizarre in the best way. And the Daniels who directed it, they've done some amazingly bizarre movies. Swiss Army Man is a movie they've done that's truly insane. So that was really fun. Other than that, I did see Empire of Light. If anyone wants to see a movie that is just a feast for the eyes, that is one. Yeah, those are two that stand out for sure.
Ones to check out for sure. Awesome. With Everything Everywhere All at Once, it was so interesting in terms of storytelling and just the kind of layers that are there as well, and then the speed of it too. It was almost complex stories and multiple things going on, where some of them even hit me after I left the theater.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the meaning there, and through conversations with others. Do you feel like stories are going to go down this route of being super complex? Yeah. What do you see in trends there in terms of filmmaking?
It definitely could be, because like traditional dramas have gone to TV. Like you don't get big budget dramas really anymore. So adding an element of surrealism or absurdism to a new story, not based off of, say, a comic book or something, that would likely justify the studio's investment in making a theater movie. So yeah, possibly. I wouldn't love that. I don't want every movie to be that. I love variety. But I do think there's still a place. Thankfully, like all these big streamers that are taking over the world have plans to push more films to movie theaters. It might not be in the wide release that we've always been used to, but I do think we'll still see some compelling, unique movies in theaters. And then at home, though, there's, as everyone knows, like television is just so good right now, to the point where it's overwhelming. I can't pick what to watch. So that sucks. I wish that was a bit more focus on, I don't know. I wish I could make up my mind.
Yeah, that's always a challenge at my home. Takes about
right.
15, 20 minutes just to pick. Even if you do have a list that's curated down, it's
so true.
Choice is endless. Cool.
Yes.
So back to the quick fire questions. What would you say is your favorite book?
There's a book, if you're into filmmaking at all, there's one called Rebel Without a Crew by Robert Rodriguez, who's a director, and it's about his first movie he made. That it's amazing. It talks about just his willingness to do anything to get his movie made, like literally like going to like donating blood to raise money to be able to buy film to shoot this thing. So that's a really interesting book and fun book to read.
All right. And favorite app or piece of software that you love to use as a filmmaker?
I mean, YouTube is pretty wonderful. I really enjoy YouTube, especially like I'm more into some more like, I don't know, I don't love the famous what YouTube's known for. That's all well and good, but I'm usually on a different part of YouTube. But for giggles, TikTok is always great. I end every day just watching TikTok. It's fun.
Nice. And I think I've answered asked all the quick fire questions that I had there. So good. Beautiful. So what would you say is the focus for you this year, for you and Erin, Hello Tomorrow, professionally and personally? Like, what's the focus for the both of you right now?
Yeah, for us, it's the focus is how to do more with less. Like as everyone probably experienced, 2022 was just bananas, and we shot more than we necessarily wanted to schedule wise. So this year, just trying to be really mindful of how we set our schedule for shoots. And then outside of wedding, it's just really pushing ourselves creatively and trying to diversify a bit more of what we do, just to kind of experiment and work our creative muscle a bit in other ways that hopefully will inform wedding films too. But yeah, I would say those two things.
And with your schedule in 2022, you mentioned, just how busy it was. What's like a lesson or takeaway that you can share with us from that year?
I think the lesson for me was, I have two young kids, and like missing a lot of summer is really hard. When I was younger, I would be like, whatever, it'll be fine when that day comes. And now I'm like, oh shoot, I missed, your kid's only one, my daughter was 1 last year. I didn't get to, play with her a ton. last summer. So that was just eye-opening. Like, hey, it's not just about what I can handle. I was actually surprised at how much I could handle last year. But for those around me, the toll it takes on them, that's been eye-opening.
So what would you say then? What would you say are the keys to that, to making sure that you're finding that rhythm?
Being really intentional with when I say no, and looking ahead and scheduling time, or just dedicated family time, but also just to try and structure our days. Like, thankfully, so our son's homeschooled, our daughter's not in school yet. So I'm really thankful that they're just downstairs and I can go see them anytime. So, and just being like, try to let myself have those breaks. Sometimes when you're in a creative zone, that's really good and you want to keep that, but also I'm trying to remind myself to be flexible. Like, hey, I can go take 15 minutes and throw my kids around a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Mac, thanks so much for being a guest on Coffee with Creatives. So great to see you. Hope we can hang in real life sometime soon as well.
Same.
And so Isaac has a question for you, Mac, which is, anyone can document a wedding, but what are some of the ways that you and Erin do things differently to draw your audience in?
Oh man, I don't know. To draw, like, in the edit, I guess. We really try to grab people in the first minute. We kind of treat the first minute of our films like it's a mini trailer for the day, just to kind of get people, like, it's a good introduction of the day, the couple, the setting, and then going into the story. That's a big part. And we try to lead with character. The story will start kicking off about a third in, but if we lead with showing who these people are, because viewers tend to identify with people. We've all seen beautiful weddings. That's nothing new. But when you identify with something unique in a person, that usually grabs hold of people.
Awesome. Miles is asking, how long does it take to actually create the film after the wedding day?
For that 6-minute really creative one, it can take, if all things are going well and we don't hit any roadblocks with like song choices or anything, I can maybe put one together in like 2.5 days. Wow. But then there's the doc edit after that and everything. But yeah, usually 2.5 days. But sometimes it'll take me a week and a half, so it varies.
And then do you, around your process, so say if it takes 2.5 days, are you then like letting it breathe? Do you revisit it again later, watch it one more time? Just because I find that distance really can help, at least me, with remembering the day and structuring it and putting together the edit in a way that I want to deliver it, that feels a bit like I've been a bit removed from it, and then I'm watching it fresh again. Because sometimes when you're in it, you see it differently. So is that any part of your process, or how do you let the process kind of breathe?
Definitely. Often I will like start the edit and I'll just do kind of a lot of like pulling selects or culling. I'll do a lot of that, picking out stuff that I think, okay, here's the raw stuff that I'm going to use, and then I'll leave it for a while. And then, like you said, time is important to, like, something that maybe seemed important in the moment isn't that maybe necessarily important for the story, and vice versa. Maybe something that was just kind of a passing moment becomes really important, and it kind of reveals itself in time. So I do think, time's important for sure.
Great. So Mac, if you could have a sit down with any filmmaker that was out there, alive or past or present, who would that be, and what would you want to ask them?
Oh, any filmmaker ever? I would probably sit down with David Fincher, just because, man, that man's opinionated, and I'm so like, I go with the flow. I would love to hear, like, hey, like, how did you come to be this person? And like, how does that inform? I do think that's important for filmmakers to have an opinion. So that's something I'm working on. But yeah, David Fincher or classic Spielberg. I think Spielberg would have a whole lot of stuff to share. So that stuff, or those people, I'd say them.
I love it. You've chosen a David Fincher quote on your website, which I want to read now real quick. So it's it takes titanium, aluminium, steel, glass, and lasers to do one thing: impart feeling. That's all we do to strangers, and we want to impart that feeling to everyone in the audience at the exact same time. And that's the magic of cinema. So share with us, like, the feeling that you get when you hear that quote, and why that's important to you?
To me, it's a reminder that like we have all these tools, they're all great, but don't get lost in it. Like the reason they all exist is to do one thing. And it's a really good reminder to remember that that's why you're there in that moment, or in the film you're making, and even in the edit, to know you're imparting feeling. You're not showing off that you can do a certain camera move, or that your camera looks really great, or that you got this really cool thing. You're doing it to impart feeling. So that's one I lean on a lot and love.
Amazing, Mac. Thanks for sharing everything that you did today, and I'm looking forward to following your journey, yours, Erin's, the kids, and Hello Tomorrow, of course. And
Sweet,
yeah,
dude.
thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the questions, everyone.